We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Friday, May 30th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin and you're watching News Generation. Joining us this Friday is Brooke Pritz.
Hello, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, and Lee Won-bin.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So Friday is when we explore topics that resonate with young people around the world. Now tomorrow marks World No Tobacco Day. That is May 31st, and established by member states of the World Health Organization in 1987. This day aims to raise awareness about the dangers of smoking and what we can do to prevent the diseases and deaths it causes. So today on News Gen, we're going to take a closer look at how our society views smoking and also quitting smoking. So we're going to begin our show with the situation in Korea. So I want to ask you, Won-bin, how do you think public perception of smoking has changed here over the decades?
I can confidently say that the perception of smoking has changed a lot. Like back in the 90s, smoking was considered as a rite of passage of being an adult. You were basically allowed and you were expected to smoke anywhere, like in buses or in offices and even on airplanes. And no one really had a second thought about it. Like, oh, there's smoking inside a bus. I guess
many thought it was just natural.
Exactly. And to give an illustration, my parents told me that back in the 90s, it was very common for restaurants to have an ashtray for each tables because people like to enjoy smoking as they were eating food or having a glass of alcohol. And smoking scenes were very common on TVs and in movies as well. But as the health risk did become widely known, attitudes definitely did start shifting.
Right.
The government stepped in with stronger regulations, such as warning labels on cigarette packs, tax hikes making the prices of cigarettes higher from 2,500 won to 4,500 won, which is about $2 to $3.50, and expanding no smoking zones as well. So these days, smoking in public spaces, especially indoors and public facilities like schools or subway stations, is heavily restricted. And I think it's safe to say that Korea has become much more aware of the dangers and the harms of smoking in general.
And if I may add, I think that in the past, especially during our parents' generation, it was easier to find places that smoking was available. But nowadays, I think that it is harder to find places where smoking is available, and there are more smoking zones in public facilities that Won-bin just mentioned. So definitely some change in terms of the smoking culture, should we say, here in Korea. Then I want to ask you, Brooke, is this a similar situation in the United States? What would you say?
Well, while the World Health Organization has helped widely spread awareness of the health risks of smoking, each country kind of takes its own approach to the issue. So in the US, where I'm from, public perception of smoking has definitely changed dramatically over the years. Smoking, just like in Korea, was once seen as normal or even kind of glamorized decades ago. You used to see it a lot in TV ads and movies, but then there was mounting evidence of its dangers that eventually shifted that view. And these days, smoking in America is largely stigmatized, and the adult smoking rate has dropped from over 40% in the 1960s to just 11% in recent times. And this was achieved through public smoking bans, high tobacco taxes, FDA regulation, and strong health campaigns like the CDC's Tips from Former Smokers, which featured real people affected by smoking. And we see a lot of graphic images on cigarette packs, right? But it's one thing to see that and another to actually hear from a real human being what they've gone through as a result of smoking.
Right.
I think we are seeing Korea start to follow this trajectory, but the progress has been quite slow. Just anecdotally, I would say I come across smoking every single day in Korea when I'm walking down the street, multiple times a day. I do have asthma, so being around secondhand smoke is quite difficult for me. Whereas when I go to America, I visit a few times a year and I go to several different states. I honestly can't remember the last time that I saw a smoker out and about in the US. Of course, it still does happen, but I think that progress has been made in America on that front that I hope that Korea can also replicate.
Yeah, I hope we could see more rapid
Yes.
progress in terms of saying no to smoking.
I agree.
So as Wonbin and Brooke mentioned, as awareness of the harmful effects of smoking grows and more people recognize the need to really quit, Korea is currently seeing some legal action against tobacco companies, which I found personally interesting. So Wonbin, could you walk us through the details of this specific case?
Absolutely, I can. So so the Korea's National Health Insurance Service, in Korean 건강보험공단, has been in a legal battle against domestic tobacco companies since 2014. The lawsuit seeks to recover about 53.3 billion won, or about $35 million. That's the cost of medical treatment for roughly 3,000 patients with lung or laryngeal cancer. And the case focuses on smokers who have smoked more than a pack a day for 20 years or more, or who smoked for over 30 years. And now in its 12th year, there's a growing pressure on the courts to finally deliver a verdict for the sake of the health of the country.
Right, I'm very curious what kind of decision the court will make. But in the meantime, Brooke, what's the general public opinion been on regarding this lawsuit?
Well, we do have some figures for you on that front. A survey actually showed that 6 out of 10 adults in Korea believe that tobacco companies should pay for medical expenses related to smoking, as you're seeing on the screen here. Smokers are more likely to think this than non-smokers, with 73% of smokers saying that they believe that tobacco companies should bear this cost, and 60% of non-smokers saying the same thing. Now, actually, this legal battle that we're talking about mirrors the situation in the U.S. when tobacco companies agreed in the 1998 Master Settlement Agreement to pay $206 billion to states for healthcare costs linked to smoking-related disease. And this was a huge landmark moment in holding the tobacco industry accountable.
Right.
And they also funded prevention programs. They started enacting advertising bans. And I think that really got the ball rolling in America. And likewise, many Koreans seem to support a ruling in this ongoing court case many years, over a decade for this court case. A lot of Koreans really want this to be wrapped up and to decide that tobacco companies should be the one bearing these costs for the public health reasons.
Right, so we just saw the public opinion over who should shoulder the healthcare costs of smokers. So I want to ask our panelists, where do you stand on this issue? Do you think the individuals should pay, or do you think the tobacco companies should bear the cost?
Well, it's a tricky question, and I think it would depend on the people. But me personally, I think the companies are mainly responsible for the damage that has been caused, because it's very clear that tobaccos and cigarettes have a direct and a deadly link to these diseases. And when healthcare costs too much because of smoking, I think the companies that profited from it are partially responsible for it. It's not just about money, and I think it's more about taking responsibility socially for the harm that they've caused. And one realistic approach or suggestion that I have is that I think they should at least partially pay for the bills or put on campaigns or more programs that can help people to quit smoking, or at least reduce it if they are already smoking.
So Wonbin says the tobacco companies should at least partially bear the medical costs of these smokers. Then what do you think, Brooke?
Well, you know, this reminds me of the debate about fast food, right? Everyone knows that fast food is unhealthy. We all have access to that information. We know how many calories there are and what other nutrition is in there. But obviously, people still eat fast food, and negative health outcomes can result from that. So the question becomes, who's responsible, the fast food companies or the consumers? It's the same question that we're asking about smoking. And I do agree that tobacco companies are responsible for creating a harmful product. Not only is it harmful, but it's inherently addictive.
Right.
And so I do think it's unfair to place all of the blame on smokers because of these addictive properties. It makes them, it's hard for them to quit, even if they really, really want to. So I would agree that companies should bear some responsibility. I think the answer is somewhere in between. It's not black and white that one person should have to pay for it. But it is a personal choice at the end of the day.
Right.
There is some culpability in choosing to put this unhealthy product in your body. So I think that the consumers themselves should also have to pay the consequences of those actions as well. So somewhere in between, I would say.
Wow, you guys presented some very strong arguments.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're now going to take a look at what our viewers think on this matter. We ran a poll on our Arirang News YouTube channel asking, should tobacco companies cover the treatment costs for smoking-related cancers? If we looked at the results, 57%, a little more than a half, answered no, while 43% answered yes. Well, thank you to our voters for voting. Now, to hear more opinions on this issue, we'll connect with a Canadian Gen Z after the break. Don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
And joining us today is Canadian Gen Z Tate Yap. Welcome to the show, Tate.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So Tate, we want to ask you, in Canada, are tobacco companies held accountable for the health of smokers? For example, similar to like the lawsuit filed in Korea by the National Health Insurance Service that we just mentioned and discussed earlier.
So the tobacco companies haven't been totally held accountable for the health of smokers when it comes to them selling their products properly with pictures and warning labels that are required. However, there have been some lawsuits filed regarding improper warnings and misleading labels, such as companies promoting a light product, trying to make it appear as more healthy, and just companies not properly warning consumers about the risks of smoking in general. That being said, there are some annual charges that these tobacco manufacturers have to pay to recover the costs of tobacco-related activities that are undertaken by the government of Canada. And I do believe that Canada is looking to take more action to relieve taxpayers some of this cost and put them onto the companies instead. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that.
Hello, Mr. Yap. I love your last name, so I had to use it. My question for you is, what's the smoking rate in Canada, and how do people generally view smoking there?
So the smoking rate in Canada, it's pretty similar to what you said about the United States. It's currently sitting around 12%, which is about 4 million people now. It's a big shift from where it was in around 2010, which was 21% and 6 million people back then. I would say this is a great statistic, and a portion of it is due to the health consequences that we're being made more aware of. However, I believe a lot of the reason for it is due to the rise of vaping and e-cigarette products. They're just far more convenient. People aren't having to leave the buildings to go for smoke breaks at work as frequently. Vaping doesn't leave a bad smell on your clothing or your hair like smoking does, and they're just tastier. Unfortunately, opens the market to younger adults and sometimes even young teens. So to reiterate on that portion, smoking rate has decreased, but I believe the amount of people who are vaping now, it's kind of offset that statistic. In terms of how we view it, it's always been viewed as a dirty habit, especially in my lifetime. But now that vaping is a thing and there's less smell, doesn't emit as much smoke, I think it's viewed even worse now. And it's much less of a social activity as it used to be.
Now, I completely agree with you about the e-cigarettes part, Tate. So in your opinion, what policies or actions are truly effective in reducing smoking rates?
I think the current charges that these companies are facing and the additional charges that they may have to face could rise the price of cigarettes. And with the economy the way it is, I think that's going to deter a lot of users from smoking as frequently, at least, if not at all. That and enhancing the restrictions on smoking areas. For example, back in the day, you might be able to find restaurants where there's a smoking section. If you could find one today, that would be very, very rare. And just public settings as well. Like there's more restrictions on where you're allowed to smoke, how far you had to be away from the buildings. Those two things, and just cracking down on the effectiveness of the warnings that we're putting, making sure everyone is aware of what they're putting in their body and the risks that it has. I hope they continue to do that, and I also hope that these vaping manufacturers will have to abide to similar regulations in the future as well, because it's also very harmful.
All right, Tate, thank you so much for joining our show today, and hope you have a nice weekend.
Thank you. You guys as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So back here in Korea, both the government and the public are making efforts to help people quit smoking. So we're now going to focus on these measures. So Wonbin, can you give us a few examples?
Right. So as you just said, both the government and the society are actively working to reduce smoking. For example, smoking is banned within 30 meters or 100 feet of facilities with minors, like schools, daycare centers, and kindergartens. And there are also prevention programs for kids, along with anti-smoking ads on TV and online. And I personally remember watching a no smoking speech from a designated educators in elementary and middle schools explaining how unhealthy and harmful smoking is. And more recently, the Ministry of Health even launched a campaign focused on quitting e-cigarettes, emphasizing that although they are a better alternative compared to cigarettes, they are still unhealthy, like Tate told us. And on the social side, there are designated no smoking apartments that encourages residents to quit smoking, and some cities even offer cash incentives to people who successfully quit smoking. So overall, there definitely is, and we can see a growing push from both policy and the community to help people quit smoking once and for all.
Now, what could be some other examples, Brooke?
Well, in addition to the efforts mentioned by Wonbin, Korea has introduced graphic health warnings on cigarette packs. They've raised tobacco taxes to discourage purchases and expanded smoke-free zones to more public areas just beyond the 30-meter rule as well. The government also supports nationwide smoking cessation clinics that offer free counseling and nicotine replacement therapies. Strict regulations limit tobacco advertising, especially toward the youth, and ongoing public awareness campaigns, including those warning about e-cigarettes, reinforce the health risks of smoking. So I think all of these combined measures that we've been talking about really show that Korea is committed to helping people quit smoking. And as a result, we've seen a shift in societal attitudes. Younger generations, like the MZ generation, now tend to view smoking a little bit more negatively compared to older generations, which I think is an encouraging indicator that Korea is hopefully driving towards a healthier future.
Right. So a lot of efforts, a lot of things are being done, but I think that the big question is how effective these efforts have been. So I want to ask you, Wonbin, first. Do you think that more work should be done? What's your thought on this?
So if we look at the big picture and the big trends, the short answer is yes. It definitely did help to reduce the smoking rate. We're seeing dramatic changes compared to the 90s. And especially, I think this is something to point out, when it comes to limiting smoking in indoor spaces, we've done a really good job. We changed a lot because smoking indoors can harm a lot of non-smokers
Right,
as well.
secondhand
Yes,
smoking.
not only the smokers themselves. However, if we dig into the specifics, there are still worries as the smoking rate did make a rebound in 2023 from 17% to 19% after 7 years of consecutive decrease. And it seems like e-cigarettes is one of the biggest factors that is playing to this, because paradoxically, the fact that it is healthier or less harmful makes it easier for people to start or give it a try. And I think Brooke would have more to explain about this.
Okay, then I want to ask the same question to Brooke.
Yeah, I think there's been some positive movement, but there is definitely more to be done, especially with the rise of what we've been talking about, vaping, e-cigarettes. In the US, vaping is particularly popular among young adults. In fact, over 15% of people aged 21 to 24 use e-cigarettes. And it's because people believe that they are a safer alternative to traditional
Like
smoking.
a healthier alternative?
Exactly. But it's kind of like earlier we talked about fast food. It's like, I'm not going to eat burgers, I'm going to get their salad. But if the salad is drenched in ranch, it's kind of the same thing as having a burger, right?
What an analogy.
So research shows that vaping is still a serious health risk. It can cause lung and heart problems, and this misconception that it's harmless actually makes it more dangerous because more people are going to try it. Back in the day, they also used to say that cigarettes were physician approved.
Oh, right.
And we've definitely found out that cigarettes are very dangerous. I think the same thing is happening with vaping. Korea has many similar concerns. While we have seen cigarette smoking decline over the years, e-cigarette use has grown, especially among the MZ group. because a lot of the products are very pretty. If you go to
Right.
the stores, they're very aesthetically pleasing.
And
They're
they
marketed-
smell
they
okay
smell better.
when compared to tobacco.
Exactly. They're marketed as healthier. So all of this is misleading consumers. And what we need to focus on, both in the US and Korea, is to address these emerging tobacco trends, educate the youth, and enact stronger regulations.
And hopefully we could see Korea's smoking rate go down
Yes.
after rebound.
Absolutely.
All right, and that's all we have for today and this week's News Generation, but we will be back next Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Brooke Prince.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and Iwon Bin.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for watching and hope you have a lovely weekend. We are News Generation.